Welcome, everyone, to a special committee of the whole meeting. It's Tuesday, April 28th at 6:55. Eddie, would you call the roll?
Cobb.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Posh.
Here.
Tometfoy.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Huda.
Here.
Stone. Here.
All right, so what we're doing today is finishing up our 5-hour meeting from April 19th. We have one item left, and well, really two, because, the wrap up, which we'll do. And I think we were on, I'm going to move this up a little.
Procedures.
Yeah, we were on council policies, procedures, and rules. Our law director is here with us to keep us focused and on the right side of everything. I'll just quickly recap what we've done already. So we talked about the role of city council, and we kind of divided that into formal and informal roles. Formal being what you would find in the charter, and informal just what council people generally do outside of their charter responsibilities. We shared our personal vision statements with each other, which helped us get an idea of where we're all coming from, so that, when we're coming up with ideas and talking, we have a kind of an understanding of what's behind that. I think I have a little bit of Addie's thing going on here.
I stayed away. Don't blame me.
No, it's I don't. We talked about our kind of overview of what we thought the administration was working on for 2026. Craig Cobb put together a very extensive, almost unabridged list of what the administration is working on, and that was good for us to know. And then we talked about our legislative goals. Councilman Posh suggested that we kind of grab, or at least elevate our two most important legislative initiatives. I'm assuming from that part of the conversation that we all agree that we're going to be the ones responsible individually for our legislative initiatives. And we also decided that we would experiment, with a new form of committee structure next month and perhaps beyond, where we just meet committee of the whole.
Which, can I just clarify,
Please.
just for my own sake?
Yeah.
So before we had, the second Tuesday was, three different or Monday was three different committees. The fourth was another three committees, and then planning and development was on Tuesday. I guess what I'm wondering is, are we sticking with those three on those specific dates, or is it just going to be, if you have something for your committee, I can put it on any of those particular, on the first Monday, I'm like, hey, we're having a meeting next week. Anyone have any topics for your specific?
Yeah. I think before the end of the month, we should see, everybody's still going to be responsible for their agendas, obviously, or on their topics. Yeah. But if three committees aren't going to meet, I don't think we need to meet 4 Mondays in a month.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But we may want to just, do as much as we can on let's say the second Monday. I'm just throwing this out there. But
so, for example, we've got our first May meeting on the 4th,
right,
which would mean that our first committee of the whole is on the 11th of May.
Ordinarily, who would be on?
Ordinarily, that would be housing and building,
Community relations
and finance, I believe.
No,
that's the other way around.
Municipal
services.
Right.
So do we want to stick to those? Or if there are things that come out of this meeting on Monday that we need to address sooner rather than later, we can put that on.
It's helpful to know you have a slot, especially if you're inviting people to come in and speak, or prepare presentations to have that, of sort of a beachhead to know that that's your time. But be flexible also.
I agree with that, and I think we've had a nice cadence the last couple months of just having a month between to work on things, et cetera, knowing that we have that space. I want to raise that I think the one issue is the planning and development committee.
That's what I was going to raise too.
So, I would suggest on that, if maybe we can just insert that, if we can check the agenda right on the second Monday. Like if we could do the Landmarks Commission, if we have time, we're planning essentially like a 2 to 3 hour committee of the whole meeting.
Right, like you could tell me for either one. Like if you have
Right,
stuff
so that's
for
what I was
both, yeah,
thinking,
you can-
right. Because we will have with the zoning code update, I just feel like we're gonna have a regular cadence, and it would be easier to slot in when there's extra time or create some time as we go along, as aside from.
So for the time being, let's just keep it,
Stick to the 3 and 3
Yeah,
and
we'll
then you
see.
can slot in where you need to.
Yeah.
How about that? Okay.
Can we talk a little bit about some logistics? I mean, so these really aren't committees in a committee. It is really just committee as a whole,
With agenda items.
agenda items.
with the chair expected to run
The discussion.
The discussion.
Who are the voting members then?
Everyone.
All of us.
Everyone,
Committee of the
because it's committee of the whole.
Okay.
Although typically you don't do a lot of voting in committee of
Right.
the whole.
Consensus contributors.
But everyone is a member of the committee of the whole.
So now we do vote in committee of the whole. I mean, to move something out of committee. So would we just do something by motion if we're?
Like if you want legislation brought, like if you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
By motion.
Yeah, that's, motion.
I guess that's what we're
Sort of
doing.
your only option.
Yeah, I don't know.
We have to have a vehicle that we have already in our committees where we move legislation forward. So for vetting to law, so we'd still need to do that at that level, right?
But we're just taking out that other step, which is now, then you'd have to, if it was just 3 people.
And sometimes the committees don't vote technically or formally. And I think that is available to the committee of the whole, and it's easier to follow in the committee of the whole than in a committee, a different committee as well.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, so,
Did that answer your question?
It does, but then we also have this trial that I think we want to try to do for the Parks and Rec and how we incorporate them into that meeting as well, those lay members. Do we still want to try to do that? Or would we still have a distinct council, Parks and Rec committee, and then a distinct lay group?
I thought the pilot project was to do it with that committee and then see how that goes, and then we'll,
But we do that inside the
Yes,
council meeting as a whole.
sure. No reason to separate, unless somebody else has. So we were talking about rules, practices, procedures. Joe, you were the last person that spoke, is that true?
Yeah.
And what was your main topic? I'm sorry. I know we
I
spent
think
a
it
lot
was
of time-
committees.
Right.
Yeah, right, that's right.
It was the committee structure that that we decided to move towards committee of the whole, and then also the committee and resident advisory group. So those two.
And did you have anything else on your list of, for discussion?
No, I think those were those were my issues.
All right, then let's move on to Sarah and we'll
Just a moment.
go from there.
Sorry.
Sarah. Everybody else, get ready for your turn.
Did I have my turn already? I can't remember.
No, you didn't. Actually,
You literally wrote down one thing on your processes and procedures, which is anything that'll make us have less committee meetings, which I think we accomplished, so.
Done, moving on.
Brevity, all right. So-
Craig doesn't have to go now, yes.
I would just say
Sure.
that and maybe this will naturally happen if we're in the committee of the whole, but finding ways to align the work of the committees across the committees. I mean, the example I keep using is our 2 studies, the housing and zoning code studies, but that, that's where I think really collaborative work comes from, is when the committees are saying, well, you're doing this, we need to plan together in some way. And it may be that we have naturally created it in the committee of the whole.
I think we have.
And maybe using that time to continually check back and say, what are the main things? What are the 3 main things that we're working on together? And those can change over a month, but reserving that time to have those discussions, I think is really important, because these are very diligent committees, but we don't always know that we're, what's doing. So that's really all I had.
Jessica.
So actually, that's a great segue to one of, I think, my frustration or something that I want to figure out how we do this better. Is I feel like each of us, it's complicated because each of us are doing our own work to move things forward. We're also all answering constituent emails and directing that into city staff as we see appropriate. But we don't always know
Right.
what is happening. And so I think I brought this up but just a few examples. We all get a constituent email. It should be going, let's say, to Director Klingscale, right? I email her, but I don't know that there's 6 other council members that email her, and I don't know, wait. And I don't know if Director Klingscale has gotten back to the resident, to me. So there's all this, a little bit of not knowing what's going on. So that's on a resident email. But also, for example, and I'm not singling you out, but just, you said, I'm meeting with the chief about a few different things. Or, for example, when I met with the administration to talk about the potential legislation on flock, how do we update each other as we're doing, working in our channels? And, one of the one thing I thought might help is kind of an FYI email to everyone. And Jim, you suggested maybe BCCing everyone, just an update. So there's that, but also there's the question of how we get information back from the administration if somebody's working, for Director Klingscale, right? If she's responded, but how do we know everybody knows?
So, the law director,
Any thoughts?
yeah, that's you. Where are we at on OMA with that kind of a thing?
Well, I mean, an email that includes everybody isn't a violation in and of itself until somebody responds.
Right. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't love the BCCing everybody method, but I understand the point that you're making. I'm not sure whether there's a mechanism to work through the clerk. And I think one of your suggestions in your comments was also some updates from council leadership related to their.
Didn't get to that yet, but yeah.
So, so by the same token, I think, it may be that there's a way to accomplish that with some formalized emails that everybody knows are informational only and not to be replied to, with some of the language maybe pumped up a little bit that you had suggested. I think the BCC is just a little dangerous because it's so easy for somebody to reply or just share a thought, and they, suddenly are replying to everybody, and you have a prearranged discussion of the council's business by a majority of the members.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But at BCC, you're not replying to everybody. You're replying just to that one person that sent it.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is the main thing is we can send informational emails. For example, dear council colleagues, I'm working on this piece of legislation. Here's what was shared by the Landmark Commission. I'm letting you know that I'm working on this.
Do not respond.
Do not respond.
And to that point, and to the point of it, you only respond, that's true. But if you're using a mechanism where you're BCCing everybody so everybody's aware, now you have a conversation going. I think you're going to find that the committee of the whole meeting structure is going to alleviate a lot of the concerns about sort of knowing where people are. Maybe not each example that you provided in your comments, like the constituent communications are a little bit trickier. I'm not sure what the answer is there. But I think that a lot of those other concerns and understanding where the committees are, understanding what other council members are doing with staff members and the administration, I think a lot of that will start to be updated on a natural, regular basis when you're having your committee of the whole meetings.
Go ahead.
So one of my suggestions on that with constituent emails is currently if they're emailing. So here's the kind of hard part. If they're emailing you guys individually, that's kind of the harder issue. If they're emailing that council email address, that we could include, say, Todd and MAC on that like list, so he would get those emails. And if it's something like you said with Public Works, he can
I
input
mean,
it from
90%
that.
of the time.
And then
it's-
you don't even have to bother. But but that's only for when they email the council as a whole. So I don't know about the other option.
Okay, so I think so we all earlier in this meeting, a couple days ago, outlined our roles. One of what I believe my role as a council person, my perspective, is if someone reaches out to us, even if they have 7 council members, I will always, if not always, just about 99% of the time, reply just back to the constituents, show some empathy, try to help them as an individual, and just sometimes I have to remind them, we're a body, we're an individual, I'm not part of the administration, and generally about half of those emails are emails that really should be directed to the administration, and I send them to Todd.
I think it's more than half, but okay.
Okay, well, I mean, the issue here is people expect you to do something,
Yes.
and so maybe they're going to get 7 responses that all go to Todd. And I don't have a problem with that. And I will know when Todd responds back, he will say, yeah, already working on this, which is great. But sometimes he doesn't respond because
People say that.
he's one of to me, but he's one of the people that I have found to be very reliable in this administration. And sometimes it's like there was one that came in regarding the neighbor that we all got yesterday, I believe. Kim, I believe her name was possibly.
Kimberly.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I see the mayor is not listed on this, and he is our safety director, but I'm very sorry you're going through all this. Let's see if the Mayor's Action Center can take care of it, because this is an administrative issue and not a legislative.
And my point was not to say that we all shouldn't be responding to the resident. My point was to avoid having city staff receive 7 emails from us. So
for the same matter.
right. And again, I don't know if I'm concerned about that. Maybe Todd's okay with it. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think Todd's given us a report on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We did say that. Yeah.
Let's see what he says.
And then back to the council, council work. I think your point is well taken. Like, what does it look like to have a regular cadence, and how does that increase, the regular sharing of communication? I guess the only thing I would push on is if we could, if we are, and I think Craig did this, and I've done this, but if we are requesting legislation to the legislation email, I would love to have us all CC'd on that, so we know those requests have gone through, and maybe similar if there are other matters. And I know I'm just using my best judgment. If I'm emailing the administration to get their to ask a question of the mayor or the law department, and I'm CCing all council because I'd like you all to see the response. Just have that in mind as well.
That makes sense. I don't know if this exists, and Addie might have a better handle on it, but I'm wondering for both of those scenarios, the constituent communications and say legislation requests from council members, if there's a way to auto populate some sort of universally accessible document that would indicate what those are, when the requests were submitted. It could just be real simple, or it might link to an email. I don't know what may exist to automate that, but that way you could have access to that information essentially in real time without communicating on an ongoing basis to all of council, which is where I think, some of the risk.
You know what the solution is? It's Laserfiche, but I've said that for 3 years now.
What is that?
Laserfiche is a project workflow management and repository system that tracks where something is in a so if it's contract or legislation or whatever, if you have a login, you can see where something is in the system where it's
Yeah.
But
I was thinking of
aside from that-
Granicus, which is sort of the same thing.
Yeah, they do the same. There's a lot of
Just
different
don't know if
versions.
there's other ways.
Yeah, Monday.com is another one that Comms currently uses.
Yeah.
I personally am not a fan of Monday.com. I think it's very complicated and convoluted, and I don't think it's very user friendly, which I think would kind of belabor the point. But
But so I guess to that, so I'm thinking maybe exploring something like that would help to address those concerns and the need for information and awareness without, creating legal risks or OMA problems.
Since Addie's leaving, I on my list, I'm only reading this because she's going, and is there anything, I put, clerk of council issues like, and by that, right,
Not with her, for
I know.
her.
That's why I changed the wording. I was like,
Talk to you offline.
but anything that anybody wanted to say, like things about, the processes that we use, which, anything of that realm.
The other thing, well, I just want to say this because I talked to Nick down in IT who does our applications now. He's fantastic. And I talked to him a little bit about how I don't think Civic clerking software is being utilized as much as I think it can be to help us in this process. Now, I would love to be a trainer to you guys. I don't know how to train people. I've like in terms of like using the software. Now they have great webinars online and everything like that, but he's going to explore it to himself, take a look and see what he can find out in terms of what's like a good method that you guys could learn to, not just you, also department heads as well, because a lot of that request kind of stuff can also go through that. There's like a great system they have.
So are you saying you know how to use it, but you don't know how to teach?
But yeah, it's a little,
Okay.
yeah, it's,
But he does.
but he should, like, he's gonna like take a look at the actual system, but he's familiar with systems like it and has done.
So maybe we set something up with him.
Well, yeah, so I'm gonna let him explore it for a little bit first, and I will get back to you on that in terms of how that is used, because we have it, you pay for it, and I don't think it's being utilized as much as it could be. And there are certain things that like you guys, like there's a board portal that you guys can access that has all of the, documents for all the agendas and minutes. You can take your notes in there, and if there's anything confidential that only council is privy to that's not going to be public, it'll be on the board portal as well as, and so it's not on the public portal, but it's on yours. Just that's,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the things before Addie goes really quickly that I would like her input on, if we get a chance to talk about this in the future, is the application process when there's a council vacancy.
Yeah, it's on my list, and
Mhm.
So I really feel we need to have the clerk involved with that.
yeah,
And the HR is, of course, when we get an HR director on board.
thank you.
One more thing.
Yeah,
Was just, and Bill alluded to it, but I would love a regular update to council from the leadership meetings to the extent that that can be shared in email. And I'm not sure, like what's discussed.
yeah. I think a slightly abridged version of that could be.
Not even a memo, just.
Yeah.
Not like an entire transcript, but just a sense of, so we can understand, like, one, if we had asked for something to be discussed, we could know if you got to it, but also we can know what what the priorities are, what came up.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Anything else?
The only other thing is the calendars. I spoke with Addie and Gail, and I am gonna I haven't sent the email to Director Prosser yet, but I just want to see if there's a way for the city calendars on the website, but it doesn't get populated on our Outlook calendars, and we don't connect our Outlook calendars with our personal Gmail. There's just a lot of calendars and there's a lot of meetings, and I just want to explore with the IT folks if there's a way to get us more streamlined on calendars. That's not our processes or anything, that's just a tech.
Jim asked if they should give us all VPN access, because I think if we all had VPN access, we'd be able to access our calendars, would then be able to sync with the city Outlook, our city Outlook calendars. But I mean, it is very problematic for me because I've got all my work calendars with a couple positions, personal calendars, all in one system, okay? And then I have to manually type in everything for a city count when all these calendar systems, Outlook, Apple, they're all designed to talk to each other. Why don't we throw that switch in our Exchange server to make that happen? And it's probably in the same thing. Well, why don't we have two-factor authentication and stuff right now, which we've been dinged on year after year after year. I just think it's just
I have it on mine.
two-factor.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was told to get it done. See Nick down in IT or give Brad
It's been rolled
Presser.
out, I don't know
Yeah.
where it stands, but
How many else, other,
You know, I had it, there's a way to disable it, like, not disable it, but there's a way to like if you're on this computer,
Oh, yeah, I
you don't
guess
have to
that's
log in
it. Yes,
on
that's
this
right.
computer, but if you log in on a different device.
pin that you're using.
No, I have it, that's right.
Sorry.
Using the authenticator.
For the record, I'm not disabling multi-factor
there's a way to
authentication.
beat it, I think I heard you say.
No, I'm just saying you don't need it once you're logged in.
Microsoft, I do, or I have to do that,
Yeah, that was just what I
the
was
number
getting
Yeah.
to,
authenticator.
do that,
Yeah.
You have it,
initiate my account.
President,
Go ahead.
But not-
the two-factor authentication?
Yes.
Well, that's good enough. That's probably better, actually.
So
Hey,
All right,
so someone from IT lets me know.
We got a few more, and mine's a little bit long, so brace yourselves. But go ahead, Craig.
Oh, I thought we covered mine.
We're done with Craig.
Anything
Plus meetings.
Oh, yeah. that's
that
right,
cuts
Maddie.
down on the number of committee meetings, I think going to this committee of the whole is a great idea. If no one really has anything on their agenda that evening, then we're just able to move on and condense the time rather than showing, since all of us are now coming to all of these committee meetings. And the other thing about keeping everyone abreast of what's going on is I think these committee of the wholes are also an opportunity to talk about what we may have done in the prior week, or there may be some events coming up to fill other council members in.
Yeah.
You know, for example, Noble Neighbors is coming up this week, or we were there, or there's an event at one of the parks or something like that. I think, not to denigrate about what happened in the past, I think that some council members weren't sharing a lot of things beforehand because they were worried someone else was going to take credit for their legislation, or they wanted to have an event all to themselves. And my sense is that no one really, we don't have that kind of sense of secrecy or ownership or whatever,
Adversarial
competition
relationship.
going
Well,
on.
there's some people are competitive. I mean, it's
I'm very competitive, but you all could be on the legislation. Can we put that as like standing agenda items? Just like council update and events, like, so we just.
yeah. I'm gonna write an Addie column here.
And if we don't have anything, we don't have
Standing.
anything.
An opportunity to share, what's on your mind. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I mean, right now that's
How we're doing things. Yeah, but I don't also feel that we will be as rushed as it seems that we are when we're just having that committee of the whole meeting right before the city council meeting. And I think it has been a bad move when we've run over and we keep the public waiting now. So hopefully we won't have to.
We've been pretty good about that. What I want to do if I see a big bus coming, I'm gonna have Eddie email you and say, could we start at 5:30? Because I really don't want. I mean, if it's like everything's got to be on there and it's got to be now. I think we have the half hour unless somebody has an objection to that. I would never use it for no reason, but it has happened where we've just been loaded.
I had a question maybe. At the meeting 2 Sundays ago, council sort of agreed to do a 2-month trial on the committee of the whole. And I'm listening to all of these questions about how this might be operated and how it's going to be structured. And I'm just wondering if with 2 short months coming up, July and August, where you're going to have reduced meeting schedules, would people be open to trying this through September or something like that? Because I feel like it might take you a little while to get it rolling.
Well,
It's just a
that
guess.
would align with our plan to have another council workshop in September. So we could use that council workshop to evaluate how it worked.
Another workshop.
We
Yeah.
discussed.
Sure.
That was it.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I know you hate to preempt these things, but my sense is this is going to work out. Gail?
thank you. I really feel that we need to work on council rules, and I don't expect it to happen this evening. But I would like to list off some of the factors that I'd like to see incorporated, or at least that we discuss amongst ourselves. See if we need it or not as a rule. The adoption of the rules would include professional conduct, including respect and civility, respect for and appropriate response to public input in meetings and on social media, appropriate council comments, ethical standards, conflict of interest, compliance with legislative processes, communication and accessibility, responsible use of resources and administration staff time, collaboration and teamwork, continued professional development, rules regarding campaigning during council meetings, and adherence to council procedures and subsequent consequences if not followed, and attendance requirements. A lot of these have developed as of what we experienced over the last 4 years. It has nothing to do with the makeup of this council. It is what we experienced over the last 4 years, so.
So where I think this could go, and probably I would say should go, and not just that, but what in this particular discussion on this particular topic of rules, procedures, and practices, I think this is going to be an administrative services endeavor. You know, obviously in committee of the whole, where I still think the people on the committee, and you are on that committee, should do.
Well, we all are not for the moment.
Right, but I don't. But the distinction I want to make here is that the three of us should be doing the work and presenting it to the four of them.
Okay.
I don't think, because I wouldn't want, just because I'm on the Planning and Development Committee to just all of a sudden have to be doing what you're doing, or even you doing, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I think we should do with this exercise is say, does everybody agree we should have these rules about conduct and so forth? And if the answer is yes, then we put it together. Maybe we make it part of 111. Maybe we make it, what we did, what council did.
Standing rules.
Some kind of standing rules. But that's decided, the author is, so to speak, or the person whose idea it is, puts it together for a meeting where we go into it, more deeply.
There's been a lot of work done already where
I see
we've
that.
collected different cities' rules, and we start in the standing rules that used to exist. So I have a lot of that here already. So that would be my first request. Secondly, we need to review the council vacancy application process. It should include a revised application and a request for assistance from HR, especially requesting background checks upfront or from applicants, so they know that that's what we're proposing to do. And then is there any comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead.
Well, I think a couple of hands shot up in the air.
Okay,
I mean,
I
so,
see
yes, but also lay out kind of what our expectations are,
Yes.
which I don't
Yeah.
think has really been out. I mean, there's discussions within the community that I use representation matters. Okay, we've heard this over and over. Okay, but it's representation, but it's also the quality of the candidate. It is what the candidate brings to the table, and it's almost online where it's like it doesn't matter. They don't have to know anything. They don't have to understand finance. And I look at, we had an administration that was led by someone that didn't have that operational experience that could come in. And we all voted for that individual, and look at where it left the city. And we're sort of little microcosms of that here. I mean, you need to have, when you sit at this table, you need to have some qualifications. And, maybe it's good to have a lawyer, it's good to have an accountant, it's good to have someone that maybe understands marketing. You need some operational diversity, but also diversity, I think, when it comes to where you live, I think there's a racial diversity that's necessary. I think there's a sex diversity that's necessary. I mean, it's great that we have another woman on council that, you know, I think was needed in this last. I think we also had a huge wish list, and those we didn't necessarily get the kind of candidates we wanted, which is we kept on asking for more people to show up.
So what I'm hearing is, and we should write this down. So we want to look at the application. We want to come up with a list of what we consider to be qualifications. And then on the interview process, you know, so here's the thing. We could put all this stuff out there. We could put the roles and responsibilities up there, and somebody could drop this into AI and come up with well, they wouldn't be coming up with it, but AI could come up with something that would just blow us away. I mean, the fact is, moving forward for every city council in the world, not just the United States, this is going to be the great leveler, and this is going to make interviews. I think this is going to elevate, if anything, the interviews. I mean, I think it's great that people have access to information, but that isn't, at the end of the day, what makes you qualify. So I think we need to talk about whether we want to keep the interviews in executive session. And I think that's another, you know, category of things. But that's since this was something you brought up, why don't you just put together this list of not just what needs to be reformed, but what you'd like to see as an outcome?
Well, I think that, I'm sorry, I'm going to push back a little bit. I
Sure.
think that needs to be a table discussion.
Well, obviously, I'm talking about, but we need a starting point.
Okay,
that's what we do.
a framework?
Yeah, that's what we need from.
I just want to suggest a couple other things.
Sure.
Is that I think this is what you like, a job description, right? Like, it's not just qualifications. Like, people need to understand what this
Commitment
is, what the commitment is. I don't think people really understand what the commitment is.
You're getting a good dose of it.
Yeah,
You had an applicant come in a couple of years ago and essentially object because they didn't realize everything that would be involved.
right. Like, once they know, maybe they're not going to apply. I mean, and again, we don't want to discourage folks, but we also want it to be a realistic expectation, right, on both sides. The other thing is a rubric for the selection process. I think, and obviously, I guess that's a question, you know, there's rubrics we use for like evaluating consulting, RFP responses and things like that. If we're doing a rubric with an executive session, is that subjected to public disclosure? I mean, I wouldn't want something like that to be public, but I also feel like we need a way to level set our own to assure that applicants will have, it's not just our, you know, how we feel in that moment. There's actually something that we're using.
If you're creating records that memorialize your decision-making process, they're going to be public record regardless of having been generated in executive session.
So maybe that's something I think we should discuss a little bit. Like, what does it mean? Like, do we need, maybe it's not a rubric that we fill out. Maybe it's something that we put on and say, this is what you'll be evaluated by, you know, and to keep that in mind as we go through the discussion. But that was something, you know, again, I just want more transparency.
Well, Craig's making a face, so go ahead.
Now, to me, keep in mind, these are political appointments.
Yeah.
And part of that also is our opportunity to select someone that we want to serve with. And it's different from when candidates are running for office and we don't have any, you know, say in that. So to me, I think we just need to keep that in mind. And that also involves some, to a degree, some subjective evaluation of everyone that comes in. Is this someone that you know, that you can see yourself working with? And I don't want us to lose, side of that, just like, the committee appointments, it's that we make. There's a multitude of factors that go into that, and just someone may look great on paper and not necessarily they're not going to fit in with the committee, and so we haven't appointed people because of that.
And I agree, and I don't know how we memorialize it, but I want to. Jim said something to this extent, right? Like wherever the appointee is has to fit in with our expertise. So if we were 6 lawyers, probably not looking for a 7th lawyer, just as a kind of like a blase. And Bill definitely doesn't want 7 lawyers, on council. But that would be, and also what committee they're going to chair, right? Like what is the chairmanship that's open for that person, or what expertise are they? So all of that has to be in there. And then the last thing I would say is, do we want to consider making us, like we have a residency requirement in the charter. Do we want to consider saying things that we would consider disqualifying, whether it's tax
I don't think
delinquencies?
we can do that.
I don't know.
think
So
that's-
I'm just raising the question. I don't think I have a firm position on either.
So I would say this, that the charter prescribed qualifications are really the only technical qualifications for council office, which is residency for 12 months and elector status. So beyond that, council could come up with, as you said, it may be something that you don't fill out, but it could be like a list of qualities that would be important to council or that council believes would be useful. But I would just caution that the more strict you try to make the application of that kind of a framework, the more opportunities you're providing for somebody after the fact to say, well, you said all of this, sounds great, looks great on paper, and then you picked this guy.
Right.
And I think there's risk in limiting yourselves because you have the opportunity to have this conversation at any time in connection with an appointment to fill a vacancy. And as Councilman Cobb said, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of subjectivity. You can decide that certain things are more important, less important, but I would just be a little bit, I would be careful about limiting yourselves too much. I do think the job description doesn't limit you and probably is beneficial for applicants and for council in the city. And then on the background checks, that's not something that people running for office are subjected to. I don't think that means that it couldn't be utilized, but there are some legal consequences in the employment context. I'm not sure, frankly, how they play out in this specific, unique role. But you have to look at the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and you're subject to some pretty strict requirements if somebody doesn't get a job because of a negative background check.
I would just, anyone that's applying for city council, we shouldn't have to tell them, you should know what happens at a city council meeting. We shouldn't have to tell them that, you should have that your public life should be above reproach, that your financial or tax affairs are taken care of. You shouldn't have, and I'm not suggesting this covers any of the applicants. I'm just throwing things out there that to me are common sense, that if I'm applying for to serve on a city council body, that you should have a pretty pristine record.
Do you work that into the expectations rather than doing a background check?
I don't know. And I would also submit this, but were it not for our last appointment, I don't, think that none of this would have become an issue, or it hadn't been an issue over all of the prior appointments that had been made to city council. And because this appointment didn't meet the expectations of some people, that all of a sudden it's our fault that we didn't make things clear enough to people. I don't know.
Well, can I just say something as an applicant?
Please.
And this goes back to the idea of really spelling out the expectations. There's no mechanism as a candidate here to ask questions. If you're thinking about, there was a statement saying, go ahead and call any councilman and they'll talk to you. Well, if you don't know a council person, you're gonna enter your candidate, you'd be less likely to do that. So I think it's important that we provide that ability for a candidate to connect with, maybe it's the clerk, maybe it's members of council, so that they can have that kind of conversation and hear from a person in addition to reading it on paper and answer their questions, because it might prevent a lot of some of the issues that may have come forward here.
Did anyone have to tell you that you needed to prepare for this like a job interview, to show up professionally dressed?
Well, no, but I will say that.
That you did?
No, not so much that, but understanding the workload, understanding the committee chairmanships, understanding all of those pieces of what would you actually do and how your week would go. Those are questions people who work, they need to have those answers. And so
I think that's a great point, and I also think Bill's point was really, I mean, the way you said it and focused it, I mean, we do not want to put ourselves in a position, I'm going to say, I do not want to put myself in a position where someone is going to say, I checked all these boxes. What's up, Kuda? You know, I don't need that. Go ahead.
So if anybody's listening,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I listen for when we're talking to a candidate is asking what the job is about. I mean, you know, what is the responsibility? What do you expect of me? I think you're the only person that you asked that when we were sitting around this table. And I will also tell you, I was also through an appointment process. Surprised I got on, and I was surprised I was picked. But I will tell you, I was put through the ringer in a nice way. I can't tell you how many council members reached out to me and they wanted to talk. They wanted to get a lot more information. And I think that is, and I reached out too. I mean, not that I was trying, I mean, I knew two of you, I think, reasonably well, you know, Craig and Tony, because our paths had crossed. And, you know, I learned an earful.
But that may be us, and there may be those people who will feel intimidated by the idea of having that, who, you know, would be good candidates. So I'm just saying if there's some way that it could be understood as a candidate that you have the right to, and you're encouraged to have those conversations, not just because you happen to know somebody.
That's a point well taken.
And the opposite side of what Craig's saying is when I applied, and this must have been close to 15 years ago or 10 years ago, they reopened the process after they had gotten all the applications. There were no transparent interviews, which is why I initially was pushing for League of Women Voter interviews, and there was no transparency about the process. So I think that I would like to, nobody told me how I should prepare, but I would like to know what the process entails. And so I think having that clear from the outset is also very helpful to know like how the decision would be ultimately made. And I would push forward, and we'll discuss it more, but I would like to see some sort of, I like the executive session interviews, but it would be good to have some sort of public.
The application is I think, poor.
Yeah.
And
It
that's
hasn't
why
been updated in ever.
The executive session interview was very valuable to know that we were in this confidential space to be able to ask the questions and ask.
second interviews. But okay.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do this with every issue, but go ahead.
If I would like to go back to, since this is Gail's time, and comment about the civility piece. Can I do that?
Yeah, we're on. Gail still got the floor.
I think you're looking for feedback on that. I would love to see that, and you did provide some examples. I think that helps set a tone for this council and for the community that basically specifies we're sort of memorializing how we're operating this year thus far. And I think that's important. I wouldn't necessarily call them rules per se, but it is sort of like what our expectations are for each other. And the civility piece is huge.
Guidelines?
Well, I think we come up with words on that. But I would love to see that, not for something that we can actually just act on, which we do anyways, but so the community really understands really what we stand for, what we stand for working together.
Well said.
I still want to have an Open Meetings Act 101 class. I'd really like to see that get scheduled with either staff or Mr. Funk. I'd love to have him teach that class because he was really good at OML, so.
Yeah.
Can we get CLE credit? I mean, if you want to, I'll take it, but if not, I'm just kidding.
And I do want to open up the request to the Civil Service Commission to review the salaries of the mayor and council.
I'm sorry, you want to do what now?
Open up the Civil Service Commission review process so that they will look at salaries for mayor and council. And I just have one, this is not on topic, but it came across my email this morning and it's from a neighbor and it's something that's affecting all of the senior citizens in this community that own houses. And what she's wanting help with, and I don't know where to begin, is she gets a lot of unsolicited calls, as do I. Mail sent to her, as do I, asking to buy our homes. And she's starting to feel harassed, excessively harassed. So what she's asking is there a possibility of passing legislation to prohibit this type of unsolicited contacts? Is there something in place at the state level that we could refer people to when they get a call like that? We could just do a PSA and the e-news that this is a number you call if you're being harassed by over solicitation.
I'm nodding because I understand the question. I don't know the answer, but we can certainly take a look at that.
All right, thank you. I'll send you an email to ask.
Sure.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you for all the detail. Appreciate it.
My turn.
It is.
So my single most important thing is the committees. And I've only, I think, talked about half of it. And that is where we're working with the, hopefully maybe as a pilot, the recreation.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Thank you. I almost think that our committees need to sort of follow a model where they start with, get some expectations. It's a standing committee. It's a standing item. It's kind of like what happens in finance. You get your finance reports, you look at the data. I think we need to start looking more at data and we need to be working with the administration. I would love to be able to see if this is a successful pilot to actually have our committees staffed with people in the administration. So this is sort of like we're sitting on our own when we're doing legislation. The administration does their stuff during the day, but the committees are when we all kind of come together and we collaborate. And I think we would answer a lot of the questions that have been brought forward, especially some of yours, Jessica, about, well, I want updates about what's going on. Now, trying to do that in the committee meeting of a whole might be difficult, but it seems like it's a solution. Let's try some solutions. If the solutions don't work, throw it out and find another one. But I'm going to be meeting with the mayor about this, about seeing if there's any way that in some of these things that, well, especially the finance committee, technically, finance committee doesn't have to be at our meetings, but they're there. I think the issue here is the expectation needs to be that they need to be part of this committee structure that we're in. And they have a role in coming up with the agenda as we do. So it's really a collaboration between the administration and us.
Well, the charter now addresses that in Article 3. It says, administration shall, I don't know the words memorized, deliver proper director to a meeting by request of council. You want it to be automatic, but I don't know that we want people there when we don't need them there. I think that's the whole reason why we don't have that. I don't know if that's where you're going, but who wants to waste anybody's time, right?
Well, if they're not needed, they shouldn't, there shouldn't be a need for them. But if you look at the Parks and Rec, I mean, it really seems to me that members of the Parks and Rec's administration piece, whether it's the director or assistant director, needs to be staffed to that committee. So that's how, I mean, the committee's useless if it's not advising. It's an advisory committee, okay? There is no advising that's happening. Nobody's reaching out to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board for anything. And these people feel kind of lost. I mean, and I hate to be picking on this one particular committee, but it would be like having a finance committee meeting without having any financial reports or a financial director. I mean, there needs to be some kind of, I'm going to use the word expectation.
So what I'm not understanding is, why isn't the council person who's assigned to that committee asking for the administration, a representative from the administration to be there? And you got to have a problem before you go, we need to fix this. And to me, if a council person was getting denied, that's a problem. And now we have a charter provision that says you can't do that. So I still don't know exactly. If the problem is that people aren't getting asked, that's a different problem than we can't get anybody to come.
But I just like to pick up on that because I think this is it's a step beyond that. If we're going to be effective, we really need to be walking hand in hand with the staff that's going to implement the legislation we pass. And we need to understand, and I believe they will benefit, and we, by working together in a concerted, continuous way. Now, maybe they don't have to come to the meetings, but that committee, that staff person, whoever it is that's assigned to the committee, is a guide to this committee. We need to know what the administration's priorities are. Our priorities may be different, but I think that ought to be part of their job, to be able to have regular planning communication with the chair of the committee, so that we're not just off there doing whatever it is that we're thinking, should be done without that kind of consultation.
We're in complete agreement.
I'll just say, I thought that's how we were supposed to be operating, so that's how I'm operating with,
I don't
the
necessarily have
planning
that in my committee just yet.
And I think maybe it's also, me being on planning commission, this was a very natural move, and I've worked with the staff for so many years. But I guess I just didn't realize that this might be an issue, and I have been
It is for
co-creating.
me.
Yeah.
Still.
It still is.
I think what's working for us on the planning and development side is co-creating the agendas. We don't have like formal update meetings, but we do touch base and we schedule calls if we want to talk through, and I'll have a list of things. So
Anyway, I think it's a good point.
Well, I think two things could happen. One is that we could bring this up with the mayor at a leadership meeting and ask him to put it on the agenda for the staff meeting, that these are our expectations. And maybe even pull out the charter provision. Not to, just say we're just following the law.
Just to make their lives easier too, then they have a direct line to council.
You need
But
old codified ordinance books and you could.
they don't exist.
I know people in Lakewood that just waive them. They waive them at the meetings. They have like printouts. And they go, no, right here. But if there's another method to do this, tell me what you'd like us to do.
Well, I think I think there's certain meetings that we all, committees that we control, okay? If we're still having committees, if it's not, but we certainly have responsibilities, okay? And, I'm gonna try to find ways in the next couple of months to try to formalize this with the administration. And, and treat this as a pilot, okay? Can we have, dedicated people come to the Public Safety Committee meetings on a regular basis and help us staff those? And the same thing with the Parks and Rec. And just sort of see,
municipal services.
I think municipal services, I think there's a particular director that probably should be at every single one of your meetings.
I'll just say for my committee, it hasn't been an issue anytime I've asked for someone to attend. Both Director Gonzalez and Director Shantz have always been amenable, and I know that is different from years past, but moving, this year has been no issues.
I don't think that there's any, there's no staff member that works for this city that has been, this year not wanting to meet with us. I think everybody has been very open and understanding. And I think I'm not suggesting this because I'm seeing bad behavior.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to
You just
waive
wanna
that piece of
formalize
paper. Yeah, because I don't think, we sort of have a hammer which has oversight on it, but I don't think we need to use the hammer.
Well, Bill, can we use the section 111 in the administrative code to kind of put some meat on the bones of what's in the charter?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't know specifically what you're thinking, but you
I don't have
can
any wording, but
you can elaborate upon, a charter command or grant of authority in an ordinance so long as you're not trying to do something with an ordinance that's contrary to the charter provision.
you know what I'm saying?
Now,
So in 111, we could put something in there that's how that charter provision that says that we can summon
Yeah.
administration officials to our meetings and actually put how that happens and, just put a little meat on the bones, because your typical charter provisions are a little bit on the general side,
I mean, I guess the question is whether you want to codify that in an ordinance or you just want to set kind of an administrative
Right.
policy. I think
Well,
I'd
I'm
rather
just
the latter.
running the gamut here.
Yeah.
so I just happen to have it pulled up, and it says council may by ordinance or resolution require that all directors and chiefs or their designees attend all council meetings and or council committee of the whole meetings.
And we
And there's
worded it that
also a
way.
provision there earlier. But again, I cannot imagine that under this current administration, that if you ask, and I'm really surprised if anyone's having
See,
trouble.
but to me, that's not the issue. The issue is we're trying, I think I don't know. I'd like to think what we're trying to do is we're finished. There's this transition from the government we had to this government has not happened. It's
You
incomplete.
mean a city manager?
I would give it an I, and I'm just trying to, I think we should be trying to figure out how future councils, as well as us, I really think that issue is irrelevant, that we're not having a problem. I mean, the question is, how can we finally set up this government to function under, pretty much any circumstances? We've kind of seen what happens when there's no guardrails up. And I think we want to put them in place.
So I just wanted to, sorry. I just wanted to say that on the, and you certainly could look at putting something in chapter 111, but in addition to the ability of council to require that all directors, chiefs, et cetera, attend council meetings and council committee of the whole meetings, the same section, just a little above that, says that the council president or council committee chair may request that a director or chief or designee attend specified meetings of council or of such committee respectively. When such request has been made, the director or chief requested to be in attendance or designee shall attend the meeting and shall answer or respond in good faith to questions asked by the council member or council committee member respectively related to the powers and duties of the director, chief, or designee. So I think it's relatively well detailed. I went to look at that because I remember looking at this last summer. But
I like it.
I think this needs to be more collaborative if it's going to work.
Right.
And I think that is what, with some expectations on both sides.
Yeah.
And some efficiencies, because right now we've got administrative committees and we have council committees that sort of have the same mission. And so trying to do all that from an administrative perspective is not efficient. It'd be better if there was like one spot and we were all at the table. I mean, I do see we have two separate, we have two separate branches of governments. And I think what happens sort of in the center, the intersections is really, it can be at the committee level where, we sit at this table with our administrative peers, listening to what they're doing, passing legislation that they're asking us to pass, giving them the money so that they can do what they have to do. In return, we are getting some oversight and we are getting some say in what gets done, which hasn't really happened a whole lot.
Right.
There's some of it's there. I've got some good examples of where some of it's been there. And I think if you get that culture going, when we leave these seats and other people step in and we have a new mayor, this is sort of the process. This is what we always do. This is, Joyce uses this term, what's the shaker way? And it's like, okay,
shaker. I've heard that term many times.
Yeah, well, we don't want the shaker way. We want the Cleveland Heights way, okay, which is going to be different. But
we wanted to transcend what's going on now. I think that is absolutely vital.
If it can be presented to Mayor and City Administrator Reese that it is a collaborative experience, but we need the expertise of those directors.
Yeah.
And I understand it's in the evening. Our meetings are in the evenings beyond their workday.
That issue has come up before,
What alternative do we have?
Well, here, what we know is that 95%, maybe higher, of city council have the directors at every regular meeting. Mr. Hannah, true or false?
I'm at every meeting.
Yeah.
No, I think that's.
I'm talking about the regular
Other cities.
That's generally correct.
And they don't come to our regular meetings. So to me, I just look at, you're in public service. If you're a director, this is not like just a total 9-to-5er, so I have it's not sympathy. It's just to me, this is part of the job. Directors have to work nights once in a while.
Howard Meyer would say that was part of his job.
Of course. And the thing is, there's example after example. Tune into anybody else's council meeting. Tune into, they're lined up like Mount Rushmore. That's the way it is. So anytime we say, hey, could you come to one meeting at night in a month? No tears.
Is that the shaker way?
it is the shaker way.
And I'm also assuming that council members, if would accommodate them if they needed to participate by Zoom. Steve is here, so getting the equipment up and running shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
If a director lives a county over.
We had Todd join the Public Safety Committee meeting because it was the last meeting, and that worked out quite well.
So I was just saying, here are our options, but I would like everybody to don't think about this circumstance. What is the best practice for city council now and in the future? You're going to get a different mayor with a different, I can tell you Beechwood, one person was just like it is now. The next person, and they have a much longer history with elected mayors than we do. Well, every city does, except for maybe, Bedford? I can't remember. There's one other anomaly in Cuyahoga County. And another mayor came in and said, nobody talks to anybody in my administration without going through me. That's, and I'm not talking about ancient history in Beechwood. So anyway, anything else?
No, I think that's good. Thanks for listening to me.
Sure. All right. Is everybody satisfied with what we are calling our legislative process? We all understand it. We all believe it works for us.
No. So I think on council initiated legislation, and I put something.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yes. So I put something together, and I'm happy to bring it up at the appropriate time. But the one that was done last administration, to me, when I read it, trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing, it read very confusingly. And I don't think it even reflects the way that we could effectively do this. So I'd like to propose like a effort to revamp that. If we could, that would simplify it, but also,
Well, we could, except we, in a sense, we've revamped it by making the committee process the committee of the whole. And that's the place now where instead of having the an alternative be, to generate it in the committee and then bring it to committee of the whole.
I wasn't speaking about that actually. I
Okay.
was speaking of how we circulate legislation, what how it determines the timelines, what is the expectation of the law department among competing priorities of
Well, that
moving
wasn't
that
even
forward.
mentioned in the process.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
That
All
was
right,
my
well,
point.
no, but
was that-
I was thinking about, that was confusing. I want to change it, and then you're talking about things that aren't in it.
Right,
So,
well,
I'm
because
just trying to-
I don't think it reflects some of the realities of trying to move legislation through with or without our committee structure. We have staff on the administration side, we have a law department, we have maybe like we have with Landmark Commission, like an outside group, or we have outside counsel that have worked on something, or with the flock legislation, we had constituent feedback. So all of those things need to somehow be part of the overall process. So that's what I wanted to broach.
So, how and when do you want to bring that up?
I have it already drafted. I sent it to you too after Sunday,
yeah,
and I
no.
asked you permission if I could talk to Bill about it, and I was just waiting on, because what I'd like to do is kind of co-create it with Bill and get his perspective on if this works for the law department, and then see if we can merge like what would work for council and what works with the capacity of the law department.
I think that's in the collaborative spirit Jim just brought up.
That's right.
If that's okay with
It's
you.
fine with me. I did just want to throw in, because I looked earlier thinking about what might be discussed tonight. I know there's discussion at times about like the logjam in the Cleveland Heights legislative process and how slow everything is. But I think if you look at other city websites, you'll find that you guys pass 2 to 3 times as much legislation as any other city in the county. Yeah, probably not Cleveland.
No, it's
Lakewood, for example, is an easy one. They did 116 pieces of legislation in 2024 and 115 in 2025.
very consistent.
Cleveland Heights did, well, this was consistent also, 268 and 272. So I just throw that out there because
context.
there's for context and perspective on, the amount of legislation that successfully works its way through the process and
Wow.
it gets before you.
Question, and I know you're busy, but how much of that is really substantive legislation? I mean, we're generating a lot of what I would consider routine things like
Sure.
these appointments to the boards and commissions. I bet you we do 50 to 100 of those, and sometimes those are separate pieces of legislation.
Right.
So I think, a lot of that may account for that, or
It may, although I would suggest that other cities have kind of the same thing going on with routine and repeating legislation. But yeah, that's a fair point. I'm not rejecting the notion that there is room for improvement.
Excuse me, thank you.
All right, council community engagement. By that, I mean, I want to make sure that, and I brought this up before, that we can go out and have community meetings. I strongly believe that council people should be able to do this. We should be able to advertise if we're going to meet with people in the community that could be something that we're inviting people through, using city resources. I think it's really important. I don't think everybody has to do it. I would strongly always suggest that the council people do it. But I'm not for, I want to make this clear, I am not for taking the show on the road and putting some kind of unbelievably huge burden on staff to do something like that. But I do like the idea that we can go and have meetings in neighborhoods as individuals, or, you can obviously do it with 1 or 2 other people. I mean, you want to, of course, avoid, any Open Meetings Act violations we talked about. That's very easy to do if everybody understands the rules. So, yeah.
I think the concern with that is when do those activities, particularly in the election year, sort of cross over into it becoming a political event, because we've had these issues come up in the past. So that's, I think, my only caveat is that we have to be cognizant of that, or particularly the perception of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely forbidden to do anything like that, but
Well, that's part of my concern with your suggestion that we use city resources to host or advertise meetings for just one or two council people at a time, because thinking about future councils, we may not expect any of us to abuse that, but I could very well see that being a process that gets abused. And I would also argue that we're always running for re-election, whether it's an election year or it's not. And then my other concern about only having meetings, public meetings or listening sessions or whatever with one or two council members, and I think I've said this before, is that if I were a resident and I'm struggling to make it out of the house at night to go to some sort of council event, I want to see everybody there. And if you're telling me that only two of you are here tonight and I got to wait until the other people come before you guys could answer my question because that's not your area, that's their area, or, if I want to talk to everybody, I have to go to a council meeting, I would be frustrated with that. And
but you can do that anytime. As a resident, you can come and see all seven of us, regularly. Now you can do it every Monday.
Well, can you get out at night if you work at night, or if you have kids and you don't have the money for a babysitter, or you don't know where the babysitter is, or there's a million mobility reasons. I just think there's a multitude of reasons that
I'm just saying, from having
up.
done it, it serves a purpose that we could never replicate at a council meeting. And it is sitting down with people in their neighborhood and giving them the floor, and there's no clock ticking or what have you. And
to be clear, I have zero problem with the idea of it. My issue is when we're using city resources to allow one or two council members to create their own.
But that's not
an official event.
Right, because I think the imprimatur of the city putting it in the newsletter makes it a council event. And then you will have questions of, why is this not videotaped? Why are only two people there and not all seven? What are the public, is there minutes? These are questions that people will ask. And I think we've complicated it the only reason it's complicated is because you would like city resources to be used in setting them up.
No, nobody's ever asked, first of all. And second of all, and I'm not saying.
Well, because you haven't used city resources to do it before, right?
No, we have.
It was in the news, I think you did
Yeah,
with
we have.
Davida.
But I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, I guess I was going to ask, and this conversation doesn't have to happen tonight, but I'm curious as to the benefits of doing it as a formal event, other than getting publicity out through the city's channel, versus doing it just as a council person having a meeting. And the distinction in my mind that I would still want to work through further is based upon council's authority to act as a group of seven people, which is the only way that council can actually act, through voting. And a single council person doesn't have authority really to make any official actions on behalf of the city or to undertake those actions. And I think that I think you've seen this in the past here in Cleveland Heights, that's sometimes confusing to people who go to these meetings, and they really don't know what's been committed to, whether the city is now going back on a promise that they thought they heard in a meeting with an individual council person, and so forth. The OMA issues are also there, but I think those are more easily managed.
I think they have to. You can't conduct city business when you're doing this, and certainly that wouldn't be the purpose. The other thing is, if we can all do it, there is no imbalance with using city resources. We all have the opportunity to do it. So
That doesn't address my authority issue. That doesn't address my authority.
No. I was addressing
Yes,
what
understood.
Jessica said. I mean, it's just, you're not saying you can use city resources and somebody else can't. Everybody can. But I just want to hear from other people.
I don't feel strongly either way.
I'm a little uncomfortable with it. I can live with it, but I'm a little uncomfortable with it. Where as a whole, we should all be together. If we do something completely separate, it really needs to be maybe done on an individual basis as opposed to with one of our peers, unless we're running for office and we're a slate.
Yeah, I mean,
But if you're running for office, you would use your campaign.
You'd be using, yeah, I mean, then do it individually.
anybody else?
No, I spoke earlier, just my concerns about when does it have the potential to cross and over to be politicking. And Jessica said about, in the sense you're always running, but it becomes more of a concern really during an election year.
Well, and that's what's happened when one of our previous colleagues held a meeting and kept out essentially the mayor and another colleague, and it just got messy. So I hear what Councilor Posh is saying, and I respect that greatly, and I'm vacillating right now.
Yeah, I mean, anytime people out there, it's open for abuse. I just think it's kind of, it would be an odd thing to have a meeting where you don't advertise it and like you're not letting people know that you're doing it. I don't know what exactly that is supposed to be or why you would. I can tell you, I wouldn't want to do it. If I didn't think people would know about it, why would I? I don't even know why I would do that.
Yeah. So, and I think you and Davida had a couple of events previously.
Mhm.
Were those well attended?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty good attendance. Like 40, 50 people. And maybe we did maybe 3 or 4, probably 4 events.
And I'm just tossing this out that, to the extent that community engagement, if every council member had an opportunity to hold an event, maybe in the community center, where they were just there and it got advertised, here's an opportunity to come to get to know this council member. Like there's a police, meet your police officers down in there. And everyone has the opportunity to do that. That's just a suggestion. We've come up with some slots and sign up for it. I also thought, in terms of community engagement, I think I commented on this. I think it's part of our job that we go out and we are accessible and we're seen and visible. And I think we do a good job of trying to get out to events. I would like to see us sign up for a shift at the King Park Art Festival. We get a lot of people through. The city has a tent there, and a city council member sit at a table or desk.
Yeah. I like that idea of the community center, or it doesn't have to be there, but just use the libraries, what have you, and and that way you could do things in different parts of the town.
The Noble Road Library, for example, is maybe we look at getting a room set up there, and everybody will have set up a night.
So how about, because I think I'd like to move on, but how about if I just kind of come up with a framework of here's limited to the topics and kind of things and the do's and don'ts, so that it's kind of clear. We had some rules, and just I'll present it at the next committee of the whole meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
No.
I was just thinking that as you go through that exercise and as some of the vice president's rule development is occurring, you might move forward some guidelines or process, constraints on something like this and embody that into a rule or an ordinance, because then you would have something that has the city's official approval. You would have a structure that's defined and understood, and it might make some of the issues easier to sort out.
Yeah, I like that. Council responding to AI generated anonymous emails. This came up, kind of recently. I don't know that we're going to talk about this as a rule or a practice, but I thought it was ironic that we got an AI generated email that, what was it? I mean, the content was generated. It was obviously from somewhere. And the accusation was that we were being asked to do things and remain anonymous, and the email was anonymous. So, I mean, do we want to have a practice about that, or do we want to formally let people know that we, because I could see this just blowing up. This.
I think it goes into rules. I mean, or we say like council members should not feel obligated to respond to abusive, anonymous, we can, I think.
I mean, whether it's AI generated or not.
Right. I mean,
Or
we
the
also
content.
get abusive emails too.
That's part of civility as well.
Council members responding on social media to things that happen at council meetings. We have had problems with that in the past. Is that something we want to work into rules? I can tell you that when something happens at a meeting and the next thing you know, there it is by one council person, I think it gets into a civility issue, or can. And I'm concerned about that. I mean, there's enough abusive stuff on social media. I don't know that we need to get in, feed into any of that stuff.
So I think, without naming names,
Yeah.
where that has happened on this particular council, I mean, I think the community really saw through all that. And thankfully they did. And I think that was shown in the ballot box in the end. I think we can't be censored. I mean, whoever gets the seat, you could go on social media and you could theoretically say anything you want to say. I think if we follow Gail's path, where we sort of have this sort of expectation of civility, that's, we can't censor someone. I suppose you could. I haven't
Censure
checked.
them.
Thank you.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because, if you violate, I don't know where you're going with these rules, but at the end of the day, no, and I meant
The first draft, Gail,
Wait.
the first draft.
no.
I will share it with you.
Let me explain when I say I don't know where it's going. What I mean is, are these rules going to be the kind of things that where you, if you violate them, there's actually some kind of penalty, or is it just an expectation? Because we didn't talk about that.
Guidelines.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, I can't see us having any kind of punitive ramification. We're free people. We've got elected here individually. We have to behave well, but I think I love the word guidelines. I use the word expectations, but I think guidelines is a much more appropriate word to use. And then people can make up their mind. The whole issue here is giving us the ability to do our work. And there's times where you could not have a conversation amongst council members at this table without some fight going on.
Yeah, censoring and enforcing rules is not unheard of in councils. I'm not promoting it. I was just asking. So, okay.
Do we have a censure? Is there a way to do that in our rules? Because there's a removal, section of the charter. but is there anything?
Robert's rules
In
has.
Robert's rules, it would kick in because we're silent on it. So the answer, I guess, is yes.
I'm sort of the mindset that we leave it as broad as possible, and if this body feels like they need to censure or remove, there are avenues to do that versus spelling out individual circumstances where that may or may not apply.
I wonder if you could just, I think, take the standards of civil conduct and just say this also applies to social media. And I think that would take care of that it's not just your what happens in the council room, but it happens in your written communication and in social media.
Yeah, email too, right.
That's good advice.
And then
Email too, because
Yeah,
I have
email,
received,
right.
as a resident, I received very abusive emails from council
And
members
that
in the
way,
past.
it's just an expectation of civility. And that's, I think, where your problem
Oh,
might have been.
Emails from council members.
There was at least twice that I emailed previous council, not this team, and I got a very nasty response. Very upsetting.
So maybe that would cover a lot of maybe what was inflammatory on social media.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, let me try to wrap this up. I do have a few more things. This next one is more of just, it's about our practices. It's more of a comment than anything, but I think it is very important for council to obtain its appointment authority to committees and commissions for a number of reasons. I just want to put this out there. One is that the seven of us will always have a deeper reach into the community than any one person. Because there are governments that have the more mayoral authority on appointments. And I would also argue that sometimes mayors are very busy, and this kind of thing becomes very low priority. It's something that this council does well. I think it's something that every council could do well, as long as you have a clerk of council and a good administrative services committee chair.
He's looking at you, sir.
And I think you're always in danger of, when you leave it to one person, of having a much shallower reach into the community and a longer wait time and so forth, depending on their workload. I mean, if anybody wants to comment on that, but that is my very firm position. And two more.
So
I think
on the there are some where there's mayoral appointees. So are you saying where we are now is where you want it?
I mean, I'm okay where things are at now. I understand why the mayor appoints the Civil Service Commission. I think is that state law? Charter. Yeah. Okay.
And it's 3 people, and I think they serve for
6 years.
a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very infrequent appointees unless resignation.
Anything else about that? I mean, I'm not.
No, I mean there are boards there are boards where the mayor shares in that.
Right.
And you're saying
I was
you're fine
never
with
for it.
that.
I was never for it. It's
Yeah, here we are. So
Yeah.
Are you proposing to change that and
no.
or just leave it as is?
I'm just saying, as we move forward, I think I'm just letting you know where I'm at on that issue. It might come up again because sometimes a new committee's formed, or we want to change the number of people, or some circumstance changes. I'm just letting you know how important I think it is for council to not just retain the authority we have, but also going forward. I think it's a better fit for council to be doing that work. The city council holiday policy. So we had one instance where, Perham we moved it. I mean, do we want to be doing that? That's my question. I think we should discuss this because there's the city calendar with the holidays on it, and people could come and go on city council that have other religious holidays. Do we want to be doing that, or do we want to just follow the city the city calendar with the holidays that are there. And then, I don't think anybody would look down on, in my view, I don't think anybody would look down on anybody who missed a meeting because they, had a religious purpose to not be there. But
I'm not sure we should make it a policy, but I think specifically, and I'm going to direct this mostly for you, Jessica. I mean, I think we keep our meeting schedules exactly the way they are today, but if there's a conflict and if there's important items on that agenda, you ask for it to be postponed, which is what you've done in the past, and we found a way to be agreeable to that. I mean, there's a lot of inner working parts sometimes in order to reschedule a meeting, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of conflicts. I mean,
I'm just talking about regular meetings. I'm sorry, I should have probably said that up front.
Well, I think as someone who asked to do this, is that it's not a question of whether or not a council member would be negatively viewed for missing the meeting. It's about losing the opportunity to vote on whatever is, or have an opinion on whatever is being discussed at that meeting because of a religious observance. And I would be happy to do that for whoever has a religious conflict. Now, if I was asking all of council to move it because I'm going on vacation, that's a different story. But we're talking, I mean, I have to say that nobody would expect us to schedule any sort of meetings on Christmas or Easter. And while Purim may be one of the there's a lot of Jewish holidays, and I acknowledge that. I mean, to me, I would view it in the same vein. I mean, if we have a conflict with Rosh Hashanah, and your suggestion is that we continue on with that meeting, that to me is very offensive.
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm suggesting, I'm talking about as a policy. Do we want to move regular meetings based on religious? I'm not talking about your religion. I'm just talking about religion.
And what I am saying is that I think what we have now is that we don't have a requirement that it must be moved. We have that if it comes up with members of council, they can make that request, and council can entertain that request.
We all on the same
I would,
page?
let's remain flexible, follow the current practice.
but I think there needs to be some understanding amongst ourselves. This is where we're all different, and I guess there's different flavors, different degrees of how you celebrate a holiday. In my mind, there's major Jewish holidays, and those are frankly non-negotiable. Okay, I mean, and I think we should, as a body, respect that. But there's also a lot of holidays out there, and some of them, if there's not an important voting item, I would think that we would be flexible. I think we've shown that, and I think if it turns out to be problematic, then I think maybe we can take it to the next step and find a way of codifying some of the stuff. Maybe not codifying.
I would like to say that I would like to follow the city's calendar. I think that's really important. It also is in the charter when our regular meetings are. So in this case with Purim, and it doesn't always fall on the first or third Monday of the month. I was willing to do that, but then when I look at all the other different instances where we should, and I also add what Councillor Posh commented on, if there's something coming up on that agenda that the person who is thinking about, well, I've got a holiday on when that agenda is going to be presented, is it possible to be adaptable on our agenda and move it to the following meeting?
I'll just say that this is also about you all, the previous councils have changed meeting times based on whether residents can attend. And I think to Jim's point about major Jewish holidays, I would be shocked if we continued with a meeting on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That would be like putting a meeting on Christmas. I mean, in the view of the Jewish community, and that's a widespread, widely observed holiday.
Schools are closed on.
Right. So I guess that, back to flexibility, I think, the problem with the Jewish calendar is that it moves around because it's a lunar calendar and not the solar calendar. So it's a different day of the week. It's a different day of the month. It's a different month sometimes, depending on the year. So that's what makes it a little bit more complicated. But I think the sensitivity of understanding who is able to engage and not, if we have flexibility, then we can make those decisions in real time with enough advance notice.
I appreciate that. We never talked about it, and I think
Yeah.
we needed to at least, with all of us here, talk about that. All right, I'm fine, by the way, with in a sense, playing it by ear, and I'm only using that term because, like you said,
Yeah,
that
it
calendar
does, yeah.
moves. And lastly, I just want to make a comment about the process for amending the charter. And this is not specifically about ranked choice voting, although it certainly applies. The charge to the Charter Review Commission was to come up with charter amendments that they felt were in the best interests of the community. That was their charge. Their charge wasn't to go, I don't have an opinion on this, just let the voters, that's not the charge. And that's not our charge either. Okay, I just want to make this clear. When in our oath and in the charter, it says that if we move something forward, a charter amendment, that we're saying this is in the best interest of the community, and that's why we're putting it on the ballot. And I just want to make sure this kind of goes back to our roles and so forth, although it does apply to our practices as well. And I want to make sure that we're all clear on that. There's three, I'm not saying you don't know stuff, I'm just saying there's three new people, there's four of us that from varying degrees that have been through this before. As a matter of fact, I think the first thing I did was put a charter amendment on the ballot. Am I wrong? I don't even know.
It was early.
It was early on, yeah. And with the understanding, most charter amendments pass. So for that reason and the and our oath and what's in the charter, I would like us, I don't care where we fall on a given charter issue. That's up to you, but we should be all approaching it with what I just said in mind. Everybody agree with that? Okay, just want to make sure.
It takes 5, by the way,
And
to send a charter amendment to the voters. 5 votes.
We don't have to agree with that. It could depend on the issue, right?
I don't think our oath doesn't change.
No, not
but-
that. I just,
Yeah, it's just, what goes on in people's heads? I'm just saying that it's nice to, when we're approaching an important issue, that we understand, there's a big difference between going, I don't care, just let them, the voters. I think that's way different than saying, this is a good idea for Cleveland Heights and we ought to do this. Go ahead.
So I think when it comes to ranked choice voting, I would be very surprised if we're going to have a unanimous decision on sending it to the voters or not. And that's okay.
Of course.
That's okay. Because I think we all have different opinions of where that is. And I think from my perspective, since you brought, I haven't decided. We have a hearing tomorrow night. I'm interested to see what happens. I think I need more data, but we'll see.
I think it does constitute an endorsement if a majority of council decide that they're going to vote to submit something to the electors.
In a sense, that's kind of what I'm saying.
well, that I think that's clear.
I'm saying that because when you, again, our oath, what's in the charter, we're saying this is a good idea. Well, let's give it to the voters. There's the exercise that this council, not you three, but the rest of us went through last year. The Charter Review Commission was charged with coming up with charter amendments that are in the best interest of the community. They passed them along to us. We rejected some. Even though they said it was in the best interest of the community, the people who were on council said some of these should not be on the ballot. Why? Because they're not in the best interest of the community. Number two, some of us decided that's not a bad idea, but we're gonna need to change it. And we did that several times. And then there were some that we just cut and pasted because as is, we thought they were good ideas. But I don't remember anybody saying, and I certainly would have objected if anybody did, I don't really care about this, just go ahead with it. It's like, that's not an answer. Not in my view. Go ahead.
Can I get something off my chest real quick? So
Does it have
there's
to do with this?
no. There's a lot of chit chat about ward-based council members, and we need to have a charter review commission to take that up. Well, we just had one that took it up,
And they decided not to.
and they decided not to do it, and I think that gets forgotten. Okay, and then I think we at times look like creeps because maybe we didn't take something seriously. That's overstating. But I mean, come on, we just had a charter review commission that did this.
This is the second time that a charter review commission has chosen not to, because the charter review commission that I was the vice chair on similarly chose. And that was one of the two major questions that we were asked to consider.
And by the same token, two councils decided, because I left out something. We did come up with a few charter amendments that weren't recommended or reject, And so we had yet another chance to say, here's another great idea that we think people ought to vote on. And we didn't do it.
There were a lot of changes of different magnitude. I mean, some bigger,
Yeah.
some smaller.
Yeah.
But I did just want to throw out that it's worth keeping in mind as you think about this entire issue that in the case of an initiated charter amendment, if there are sufficient signatures, council has no authority to not send it to the voters. So it's a little bit different twist versus the council initiated charter amendment, but for what that's worth.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have to put,
Correct.
once we get the signatures and the Board of Elections, we have to put it on. Go ahead, Sarah.
I think it would be interesting to see the history of the of major pieces of legislation that have gone up for a referendum and whether those were initiated by signature-driven petition or by council. And especially for those issues that are of such broad public interest. Something like this, it's going to affect the voting in our city, and it would seem to me that would be the logical way to do this. It's an important issue if it was going to be
I
considered.
mean, that's what Citizens for an Elected Mayor did, but, then there were.
Cedar Lee Meadowbrook.
That was
and
I just went back and looked at them, and it looked like that's been the history.
Well,
Is
Cedar
that
Meadowbrook
they've come up with.
That was a charter, wasn't
wasn't a charter. It wasn't a charter. It was, but it was.
Referendum.
initiate, yeah.
It was a
So the
citizen.
charter stuff is all
So
been, it's all, except for issue 21, changing the form of government. The other, and there was only one or
Charter
two other
itself
charter
was driven by
amendments
signatures, right?
right in the last council of the clerk.
Yeah.
And we also changed, the time and the manner of appointment when we had a vacancy on city council. And that was kind of rushed through, and
Yeah.
that was
Oops.
a mistake.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we taking July off?
So we're going mid-July to actually, if we, I don't know, we didn't really exactly draw a line of demarcation, but we have a regular meeting. We're going to have a regular meeting the first Monday in July. And then I guess we're going to have the committee of the whole meeting
For the second.
the
Monday.
second. And then we're going to break until mid-August. He's smiling already. He's like,
I'm just thinking they're both really nice months.
yeah, so we got a little bit
Do
of
we
both.
need a piece of legislation for that? Does Addie need to create a piece of legislation so that, or we formally announce it again? Or how do we make people aware?
I think it's usually done by motion, but it's sometimes done by.
Yeah, we haven't done a motion on that.
I'd like all the staff to know that that's what we're doing.
Can I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I think there's times where if we're on vacation in July, it's okay to miss a meeting. I mean, it's not great, but it's okay to miss a meeting. And we have more vehicles with Zoom that lets us attend a meeting.
So you're saying no big,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but okay, but here's the but issue. I mean, I think that you could cancel the meeting. I mean, plan on canceling, keep the meetings out there, but sort of, pencil it in, I suppose, and cancel it at the last minute.
You know, this is a very common practice. I mean, it's almost every single city council.
I'm gonna push
mean-
back because I think
No.
we could use a break and then also staff could use a break from staffing our council.
I can't tell you how
Got
much
you, though.
staff looks forward to us being, I mean, no,
Gone
they're,
for- yeah.
I mean, they love it. They love it. I mean, listen, there was another council person that had the same feeling you did about this, but the rest of us didn't share it, but that's okay.
Hey, it's okay.
I think what the thing for me is when we're taking a break, my brain takes a break. When we're taking a break, the staff gets to take a break from prepping and being on call and the things that go on outside of these meetings. And it's just really important.
I respect that.
And I spend time with my family during that time period, so.
Then,
So, but we do need to make a
Yeah,
motion.
We can do
on that.
something next month.
Okay. So I'll make sure that Eddie brings. All right. Are there any topics, like I know we had 6 or 7 topics, like categories, anything we didn't, I don't want to cover anything else, but I mean, is there anything that you said, geez, I wish the agenda would have included? Good. That's good. That's really good. Because that's rare to get 7 people to go, no, that about covers it.
All the screens are shut on the laptop.
Well, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean reopen anything. I meant more like
our tummies are growling.
to look down the road, if we're gonna do like September or whatever. All right. I guess we all know what we're supposed to do from here.
Can I say one, thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. This is great. I'm glad that we were able to have these 7 hours, actually
Almost
7.5 hours.
No, right back at you. You pushed for it and you made a framework for it. And really appreciate it. And we talk very frankly and openly to each other. It's a very collaborative, I feel really great about the way this is all working. So before anything goes wrong, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:47.